The Long Road by Wolfland. Leaning into the driving sand, Stephen swore the hollow whine was actually growing louder as he kept his feet moving. The pitch shifted and rolled with each step, and an involuntary shiver ran up his spine. As he peered through the shifting sand, new outlines began to take shape. Short, square walls rose from the desert floor around his feet to trace geometric patterns away through the dunes. Nestled between the walls were taller structures of unmistakable origin. They were broken and crumbling from the brutal desert conditions, but Stephen knew right away he was looking at the remains of some sort of ancient settlement. The dwellings were all built of fading sandstone that would be easy to miss in even the slightest sandstorm. If the discovery of the hidden ruins wasn't enough to set Stephen's hair on end, it was what was in the ruins that sent a chill through his body. Through the blinding conditions, the ground surrounding the buildings appeared to shift to and fro, but it wasn't composed of sand. Instead, it was a colony of Baltoi, all teetering in unison as they sang. It was no wonder that the cries in the wind had changed so much. The sound wasn't coming from just one lost Baltoi. This was the voice of dozens of its kind, all wailing as one. And almost as abruptly as the sandstorm started, it died. Hesitantly, Stephen pulled his bandana down and glanced around the village, not daring to speak in anything more than a whisper. "What is this place?" Instantly, silence swept over the horde of Baltoi. With a collective rattle, they all turned to face him in unison. Stephen froze. "Beldam, a little help here, please. I didn't upset them, did I?" Chattering, Beldam gave him a nudge from behind, sending Stephen stumbling forward toward the Baltoi. "Whoa, wait!" But Stephen quickly fell quiet as the crowd of Pokemon parted to reveal a lone Baltoi at the center of their midst. It tottered up to the front of the group, and a look of recognition swept across Stephen's face. "You're the Baltoi from the sandstorm!" The little ground type seemed to nod in confirmation before it hopped once and gave an enthusiastic twirl. At its antics, a hollow murmur swept through the crowd of Baltoi behind it. Beldam was quick to chatter excitedly at his side, and Stephen, although still wary, gave a small smile and bowed. "Then we owe you our thanks for safely guiding us through that storm." But his smile faltered as he continued. "But I can't shake the thought that our arrival here is no mere coincidence. You've been following us through the desert for a while, haven't you?" With an upward sweep of its arms, the Baltoi rattled in affirmation. Bringing a hand to his chin, Stephen nodded. "I thought that might be the case. Aron has been on edge these last couple of days, and Beldam started acting strangely too." The little Baltoi tilted to one side with a hollow whistle as it eyed the Pokemon at Stephen's side. He smirked. "That sandstorm was no natural phenomenon either then. You deliberately separated us from Dusty and brought us here alone. Why?" As if to answer his question, the sea of Baltoi parted before him, creating a path towards the largest structure in the village. The lone Baltoi crooned a single note and turned to totter along the path. Stephen was quick to follow, with Beldam in tow. As he waded through the crowd, Stephen couldn't help but glance in awe at the ruins of the village. Crudely carved pictographs marked the walls of several of the structures, and he could make out symbols that looked just like the Pokemon that milled about his feet. He reached out a tentative hand to brush one of the carvings, and whispered to Beldam as it hovered close. "The Baltoi must have lived here in this village for centuries." Sweeping its eye from the glyphs to the Pokemon in question, Beldam chattered in agreement. As trainer and Pokemon moved to follow after their impromptu host, a wailing cry issued from the group of Baltoi off to their right. Startled, Stephen turned towards the noise and froze as a new sound joined in. Rumbling and hissing, one of the buildings at the edge of the village lilted to the side and began to disappear into the sand. Wide-eyed, Stephen was able to answer his own question from earlier. The ruins are sinking. These Baltoi are looking for someone to save their home. Suddenly, there was a flood of commotion at his feet, and Stephen looked down to find the Baltoi pressing in around him, closing the path from which he came, and funneling him towards a large, temple-like structure where the lone Baltoi waited at the entryway. Beldam whined a long, melancholy note, and Stephen looked at his partner in surprise. Beldam, what did you tell them? I can't do anything to save these ruins. Even if I could call my father to get an excavation team out here, by the time they'd arrived, it would be too late. Still, the wave of Baltoi continued to push Stephen along. Beldam! You have to tell them I can't do anything to help! Instead, Beldam ignored its trainer's pleas and floated off to join the Baltoi at the temple doors. With a frustrated sigh, Stephen allowed the Baltoi to fill in behind him as he followed his starter. As he reached the top of the stone steps, both Pokemon darted inside the structure, and Stephen ducked through the doorway after them. Pausing as he stepped through, Stephen took in his surroundings. The temple's interior was simple in both scale and adornment, but the object that caught his eye was an altar perched at the mouth of a gaping hole in the floor. Baltoi and Beldam hovered around the edge of the hole, worn and crumbled with age. Cautiously, Stephen approached the two Pokemon, listening to the floor grate and shift beneath his weight. As he drew close, Baltoi stopped its movement and teetered at the edge of the opening long enough to meet Stephen's gaze with its own, before it toppled through. Baltoi! Stephen rushed forward to the spot where it fell, only to discover a set of crumbling stairs leading down into the temple's underbelly. He could hear Baltoi rattling about in the darkness below, but he hesitated to join it. It wasn't the dark that unsettled him. He was perfectly comfortable in the deepest of caves. It was the shifting sand that had him worried. From the conditions of the rest of the ruins, there was no telling how stable the foundation would be. A low hum sounded at his side, and Stephen glanced at his partner. Beldam's gaze was fixed on the spot where Baltoi disappeared. You want to follow it? Beldam hummed once more, and without waiting for Stephen's approval, it floated down into the darkness. Hurriedly, Stephen swung his pack off his shoulder and dug through the contents before coming away with his headlamp. Donning the light source, he switched it on and followed after the two Pokemon. The sight that greeted him in the subterranean room left him speechless. Slowly sweeping the beam of light across the space revealed a treasure trove, the likes of which he had never seen before. Massive slabs of sandstone rose from the earthen floor, each one adorned with countless fossils in nothing short of immaculate condition. From where he stood frozen at the foot of the stairs, Stephen could count at least 20 different fossilized remains of various species. Quiet rattling snapped Stephen's attention away from the fossils, and he looked down to see Baltoi teetering about his feet. Beldam hovered nearby, watching silently. Is this the real reason you brought us here, Baltoi? At Stephen's question, Baltoi wobbled to a halt and swept its arms wide, gesturing at the sandstone monoliths. Beldam floated to join Baltoi and chattered at the sentient clay doll. Baltoi's own hollow rattles echoed about the space in reply, and as Beldam's eye drifted from fossil to fossil before turning towards its trainer, Stephen felt his own eyes widen in realization for the second time since they had arrived. You didn't bring me here to save the ruins. You brought me here to save your friends. Beldam bobbed sagely, and Baltoi pirouetted with a happy rattle. Then we don't have much time. Beldam, grab my tools. We need to get started right away.